Damn, as soon as I said the name, that shit disconnected me. All right, let's try it again. Let's talk about Dr. Malachi Z. York. Now, it's a sensitive topic for many. It's a very passionate topic for others. Some people don't know who he is. So, from my perspective, I'll just give a quick synopsis of the master teacher because that is who he is, the master teacher. Anybody who is in the spiritual community or woke community or any of these things, they're all his sons, either literally or figuratively. And he founded that entire movement. He's the master teacher because he's written, conservative estimates say, 1,200 books. I've seen as much as 1,715 books. It could really be disputed as to how many. He founded an entire community, sovereign community, called AMURAI that was built in Georgia. There's a pyramid, there's sundials, pylons, all kinds of things that aren't typically found to be of, let's say, new construction in the Americas. And aside from this, he has impact and influence through many, many different circles. Now, if you look at, just say, for example, the books, if there's 1,200 books, I've seen many of them. I've read several of them. I can't say many because there's a lot, but they cover basically every topic you can think of, from the true history of blacks to the true history of Egyptians, going all the way back to biblical times and perhaps even prior to this. They speak about different extraterrestrial races that may or may not have influence on Earth today, to inner work and energy, as far as what certain disciplines, like Taoists, for example, they call Qi and Qigong. In Japan, they call it Kai, and they have their studies of it. What the yogis of India call prana and yoga and these things. He discusses a lot of these sciences and breaks them down and takes it all the way back to the root, showing the roots of what came before yoga. Mind you, yoga was founded 6,000 years ago, according to their texts like the Bhagavad Gita and other of those sacred texts, and shows very practical ways that anybody who aligns themselves with it can access higher states, access certain abilities, access just even being able to cleanse oneself, cleanse your body and your energy pathways, to be able to just, let's just say, do miraculous things. If you're curious about it, then you can feel free to look into some of the books, some of the text. But these are just like a small facet of it, right? He had influence in music. I mean, he was a musician as well, has some incredible bodies of work that came out in the 70s. He founded the Neo Soul movement, put the energy and resources behind those like Erykah Badu, Lauryn Hill, Talib Kweli, Music Soul Child, the singer Joe, on and on and on. The list goes on. There's several rappers who have studied with Dr. York and studied with the movements that he founded, such as Long Live the late Prodigy from Mobb Deep. He discussed him, and he paid homage to him several times before his untimely passing. I actually talked about that in the first episode of my podcast, Grown Man Talk. If you want to check it out, you can check it out on my channel. I kind of discussed it at length and showed some clips and stuff like that of Prodigy paying homage to him. But there's also some like Ghostface Killer. There's even some modern titans that named people will be familiar with, that could be considered students of the movement that Dr. York founded, such as possibly a Cat Williams, et cetera, et cetera. And we kind of see how all these things play out. Now, all right, now, I'm coming. Now, when, what's up, Jalissa? Yo, Diego, vote Trump. We're not going to talk about that today, but you can do what you want. Now, it's interesting when you start to get into the discussion of Dr. York and you start seeing the different players that are at play on both ends of this. So he was arrested through an indictment, and they raided the land that he built that I just mentioned, AMURAI. He's imprisoned, I believe, for 135 years over crimes that are, interestingly enough, not on the actual docket, but they're in the press releases. So they claimed that he was being charged with sex crimes and, endangering minors and all sorts of other things that are very gross to think of or consider. But it turns out when you take a close look at these court documents, you take a close look at the actual paperwork, if you can actually get access to them, you'll find that none of this stuff is even on there. So what is he in there for, right? If you trace back to, let's say, the the hype, the heyday of agencies, three-letter agencies, and their activities during, for example, the civil rights movement, the FBI stated that they have in their documents, and it's basically in their codex, that their objective is to stop the rising of the Black Messiah. Now, we've seen this being directed towards those like Huey P. Newton, those like Fred Hampton, those like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, even the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, Dr. Fard Muhammad, all these different luminaries that rose up and were pressing to lift melanated peoples out of their oppression. They fell under attack. Many of them, strangely enough, they get pinned with the same type of crimes over and over again. And not even just in this realm, but if you look at, some of you may feel certain ways about this. I appreciate you, Join X. Some of you may disagree, but I happen to have a pretty sufficient amount of knowledge as far as the real workings of what's going on with it. Now, I'm not putting him in the realm whatsoever with Dr. Malachi Z. York, but looking at what his mission was, or is, Andrew Tate, right? He was raised with all sorts of sex crimes and, human trafficking and all these kind of things. And strangely enough, all the women who they are saying are victims, they've gone on record to the media saying they are not victims. And when the court hearings came, mind you, they still haven't gotten to the trial yet, and it's been like 3 years. But when the hearings came around, they're all yelling at the judge and the prosecutor saying that none of the stuff that is being said, that none of the stuff in the paperwork that is being attributed to them as far as being a victim or any of these things is true, right? So whose intention is it to see someone that is pressing for people to, work on bettering themselves, right? Andrew Tate's mission is, masculinity and all these kind of things. So getting stronger, getting healthier, getting rich, all these kind of things. They can be considered, I guess you could say, virtues in itself. Some people may consider them to not necessarily be good things. But the fact of the matter is there are several people who are saying their lives, to the magnitude of tens of thousands, that are saying their lives have been improved since they either started listening to him or joined his program, Hustlers University or The Real World. And over again, I saw pretty closely that these brands and these names were being attacked by media, being attacked by press, all these kind of things. It seems like the same playbook that had been used by Dr. Malik, or used on Dr. Malachi Z by, interestingly enough, some of the same agencies. So it begs the question to wonder, and again, I'll repeat what I said a bit earlier. It's starting to rain now. Why is Dr. Malachi Z still in prison 23 years later for crimes that he apparently did not commit and crimes he was not charged of? Now, I don't know if y'all can still hear me with this rain. I'm trying to get out of the shelter real quick. It's gonna fuck up. It's gonna fuck up the live. It almost just reported somebody just from raindrops. Now, if you look closely at some of the movements that were either founded by Dr. York or the people who started the movements after he was incarcerated, I'm not going to point fingers at anybody, but there's some groups of people who seem to have a vested interest in keeping him incarcerated and having him transcend, lose his life in prison in Colorado ADX, the highest maximum security prison in the United States, possibly the fucking world. So when it comes to these movements, there's movements that, people will start saying that they're going to try to free Dr. York. They're going to put it behind, XYZ money behind this law firm and that law firm to get him out and all these kind of things. But it's very strange when they do these things because oftentimes they'll opt to operate in secrecy. Oftentimes they'll opt to, not want a lot of press coverage or want a lot of media coverage on their actual movement and what they're doing. And you would think in a case like this, where obviously there was a huge media run to get him in there in the first place, all sorts of things slandering his name as far as things that they were saying he was doing that he wasn't actually doing, you would think if they really want to see him out, they would actually want to have people know. They would want social media campaigns. They would want news campaigns and interviews and all these kind of things. But time and time again, and I've seen this, mind you, I've only really been aware of Dr. York and those in his movement for probably about 2.5 years. But time and time again, I've seen that certain people, like say, for example, Faise One, he's on my most recent album, Nothing Ever Dies. And you can definitely check out his channel on YouTube for more, because he's very, very tapped, very illuminated. Certain people like him who are really pressing to do the things that are necessary to get him out and really pressing to get the word out and clear his name, the things that Dr. York is asking for, he'll face a lot of contention from some of these individuals and some of these groups, to the point that where his life is on the line, just like anyone else who's really, really pushing for him. But honestly, there's not many in that category. So what I'm going to do, just give a quick call to action for those of you who are still in here, those of you who catch the replay. If you find this to be curious, if you find this to be interesting or odd, first, you can feel free to hop into Dr. York's books. You can search on Google for Dr. Malachi Z. York, the Holy Tablet, spelled like the same way I did on the title. You can subscribe, and if you're watching this on the YouTube live scroll feed or whatever, you can subscribe and check out the replay on it so you can get the right spelling. Search up The Holy Tablets by Dr. York, or any of the other books or PDFs that are available freely, because most of them are out there for free. Just put your eyes on them. Just read them. See what happens. See what you find in it. You might find something interesting. You might find some questions answered that you have had a hard time answering your whole life. All these kind of things. So first, do that. Study the man's works. It's much better to study a man's works, and this goes for anybody. Much better to study a man's works and what his actions were or are and what he's actually doing than to study the things that people say about them, right? And you can correlate this to, the way people go at, again, Andrew Tate, the way people go at Trump, etc. Again, I'm not equating them to him. I'm just talking about the way that certain media machines and such things will go at these type of people. So study the works, first of all. Second of all, I want you to research what it actually is going on with him, and just talk about him with some people. Ask some people around if they heard about it. Ask some people around if they remember in 2002 when there was a huge press run talking about this man in Georgia who was being locked up for 135 years for child crimes, and ask them what they think about it. Ask them what their opinion is, right? Show them some of the information that you find. Let's have a discussion. I'll come back probably sometime later this week. Today's Sunday. So I'll come back later this week, and I would like to have a discussion with some of you guys about it. And let's see what we can find out. Let's see what we can figure out. Let's see what we can make, shake, and move. Because for all intents and purposes, if the man is innocent of the things that he is being accused of, then he should be released, right? No one that's innocent should be sitting in jail or in prison for 135 years if they didn't fucking do shit, right? So we'll have a discussion about that a little bit later. I'm very aware that I'll very likely come under attack for even discussing this, but I've already been under attack profusely for the last 3 years anyway. So it is what it is. There's no fear in me. Ain't no bitch in my spirit. So check that out. Do some research on them. See what you find. Drop some comments on this video or any other video on my page about them, about what you find. And if you want to see them free, let the people know. Post it on your pages. You can post the comments on mine. Free Dr. York. Let's get the movement going. Peace.